All right, we're going. Wayne, it's all over for you.
Is this my moment? This is
It's
when
your
they're
moment.
finally going to get me.
I finally got you. It's been a years
You're
long
going to get me.
campaign.
Oh,
Yeah.
shit.
Welcome.
It's been so many years people trying to destroy me, and this is my moment. This is when it's
it.
all going to fall apart.
Yeah. You made a big mistake coming on here, my
You're the
friend. This
one
is
who
the
knows all
snake
my
spin.
dirty secrets. I mean, you were there in Sonoma County.
Yeah, I know it all. I know it all. And
God
yeah.
forbid Laura Pacelli and Bob Weiner find out about our behind the scenes conversations.
Hey, if you thought Richard Vegan Gaines was bad, welcome to the snake spin, my friend. You're about to get the NPR treatment. My friends joke around like, what if like an NPR person is mad? They're just going to be like, you really upset me.
I don't even know if they're going to go that hard. I will say, I mean, I think one of the best interviewers just in all of media is Terry Gross on NPR. She's
I was
amazing.
actually listening to her last night. Yeah. And I was reminding myself of how good she is.
Yeah. And she's interesting because she definitely does challenge her guests, but she does so in this weird, loving way. I mean, partly it's just because her voice. Her voice is like the perfect voice for that show.
Yeah.
Because it's just so comforting. It's a sort of voice you can listen to while you meditate and it wouldn't even disrupt you.
Wait, Wayne, I got something here. What is this here? Uh-oh. What is this?
Oh, shit.
Oh, shit.
Thanks,
I laughed
man.
and I blew them out.
You blew out my birthday cake candles.
Yeah, sorry.
Thanks, man.
No
It's
wish
43
for you.
years.
43
Can you believe
years.
I'm this old? I'm so old.
Oh, shit.
43
man.
years old. You know, I still feel like I'm, as I said, I still feel like I'm 12 though. Thanks, man.
I just want to say I'm the biggest asshole because I'm just going to share this. Like I was giving you shit yesterday because
you were giving me shit.
I was because we had this
it's
scheduled
constructive feedback, man.
I was waiting. I had scheduled this for the time today, and I was like, Wayne is like busy as shit. He's like doing all this important stuff, and you actually told me all the stuff you were doing, and I'm like giving Wayne. I'm like, give me an answer, Wayne. And yeah. And you didn't play the birthday card. I didn't know this was your birthday. And
I mean, it's because it's kind of embarrassing that it's my birthday. I'm 43 years old, and I have achieved so few of my personal goals. I will say I've done a lot for animals. I'm pretty happy about. Well, not even me. I mean, we've done. You've been a part of this. So many other people have been a part of this. So we have accomplished a lot for animals. But every time I have a birthday, it honestly feels kind of terrible because I just think about all the things I dreamed of personally when I was a kid, and honestly, I haven't achieved many of them. So, but that's life. Sometimes you just have to sacrifice some of the things that you love and you find meaningful because there are things you love and find even more meaningful than your personal dreams. And for me, that was just seeing what happens to animals and realizing that one, we have to do something about it, but two, and maybe even more important, and I know you sort of come to this recognition too, that we can do something about it. There's tremendous power in activism. That, God damn, Jeremy, why don't more people see that? If people just saw how powerful it is to speak out, we could change the world. I mean, the Mark Jacobs stuff that you've been telling me about. I still need to put something on my Instagram story just shouting out those activists because you got, one of the richest and most influential designers in the world. And I think it's probably something like 20 people around the country were all it took to push him over the edge and say, all right, I'm done.
Well,
I mean, obviously more people participated, but 20 people were maybe even less than that. And if you think about just the organizers, the people were really pushing that hard. It wasn't that many people. They made a huge difference.
They really did. I mean, not a lot of people organized, I think, but a lot of people did show up. That New York demonstration that they did for 2 weeks was pretty massive, actually. They had maybe 100 people at some of these things. So sometimes they show up. And the only thing that really rivals it are stuff that I've seen you do. And like, I wasn't a part of the Sonoma demonstration, but that is by far the largest demonstration that I've seen. It was like 500 people.
Yeah, 500 people.
And that was incredible. I mean, you organized that.
It could have been so much bigger, though, Jeremy.
Yeah, it could have been bigger. It could have been bigger. But I mean, you are one of the people who can really inspire. And that's kind of one of the things that I wanted to talk to you about and start this with was just, you've inspired me over the years. You've inspired countless other people. I'm talking to a lot of influencers through your Instagram to schedule interviews for your YouTube channel. And a lot of these people who I look up to say, Wayne, you're an inspiration. In fact, we published David Rams today, and David Rams was on there saying, "Way as a longtime follower and admirer of yours. I mean, people look up to you a lot, and it's because you have this just beautiful way of speaking that you really inspire. So, I mean, one of the ways that people can make this happen is just by spreading your message. But
Yeah.
let me ask you this.
There's something better they can do though. Spread their own message, which is why
Yeah.
I'm glad you're doing your YouTube show and why I think so many people look at someone like a David Rams or an Earthling Ed or me or Melanie Joy, Ingrid Newkirk, and think I could never be like that. And the reality is, all of us were in your same place.
Hmm.
15 years ago, I was looking at someone like Ingrid Newkirk and thinking to myself, "Oh, I could never be Ingrid." I mean, she's a leader. She's just a legendary speaker. She's so brave.
Hmm.
I'm a dork who sits in front of a computer. I mean, I'm still a dork who sits in front of computers. That hasn't changed, but I really didn't believe that I had the ability to influence really anyone. I mean, 15, 20 years ago, maybe not 15 years ago, but 20 years ago, because 15 years ago was about the time I started DXC. Damn, I'm getting so old. 15 years ago, I was 28 years old. I had already failed at 2 careers 15 years ago.
Look at you, Wayne. You're glowing off the screen, and I'm like, I just got to
Oh,
get
that's all just
right.
that's
I
all
got to
just
get
color correction from StreamYard. No, I actually look horrible. No, I don't look too bad, and I attribute a lot of that to veganism. I actually think.
yeah, veganism
And
and
I
working out
actually
every
am
day.
increasingly convinced that the vegan diet actually is much better than even I thought, because I was not a health vegan. But my
Mhm.
point is, 20 or so years ago when I got started, I saw someone like Ingrid Newkirk or Lauren Gazzola. Lauren Gazzola was one of my heroes. She was one of the Shack 7. Amazing speaker, just such an inspiring speaker, such a brilliant person who went to prison for
Mhm.
6 years, 6 year sentence for running a website. That's all she did. She ran a goddamn website and they threw her in prison for 6 years. That was to me bravery. That was to me courage. That to me was inspiration. And I was just a random vegan who, sat around on forums. Back then we didn't have social media, so it was like
Mhm.
Vegan Freaks and Vegan Represent and all these forums. And I'd be making all these comments under pseudonyms and getting these little digs in here and there. What I thought was a good point about animal rights. 3 people would read it, and I'd go home satisfied and think, like, yeah, I convinced 3 other vegans that you shouldn't argue the health argument. And now I'm changing my mind and saying, go ahead, make the health argument if you want to make
Make
it.
the health argument. Yeah,
And
right.
now, 15, 20 years later, I've reached tens. Actually, at this point, I've probably reached hundreds of millions of people.
Mhm. Yeah, you
We've
have.
rescued hundreds of animals. We've changed laws in ways that I wouldn't even have believed anyone could do it, much less me. The fact that we were responsible for banning fur in the entire state of California, $600 million industry.
Mhm.
Millions of animals have probably been spared torment. Rabbits, mink, chinchillas, all sorts of animals have not been tortured and slaughtered, anally electrocuted, and killed because of the work we did. And a huge part of it was just a switch in my own mental framing, a decision that I made in the mid 2000s, after my first dog died, that I would be a part of this. And when I decided I'm going to do this, and especially in 2007, when I decided not only am I going to do this, but I'm going to cross the boundaries that other people are not willing to cross. That was it. It wasn't some
Mhm.
extraordinary ability I have. I was not a particularly good speaker. I was scared of everyone. I hadn't even been on a date in 2007 when I walked into a slaughterhouse. That's how scared I was. I was scared to ask
Mhm.
someone out on a date, but I crossed that boundary, walked into a slaughterhouse. And I've said this before, it gave me superpowers. It was like it just changed my life. I felt like I can do anything because
Wow.
if I can cross this line that everyone else is terrified to cross, then what else can I do? And that changes everything.
Yeah. And what was it like? Like when you crossed that line, were you still scared, or did you all of a sudden did it melt away really quickly? And I know some of this
Uh,
story, but
yeah, no, I honestly, I mean, I think I talked to us. You've had some of these experiences now, Jeremy, where you're in the field, um, and your heart does pound, especially before you get to the location where you're doing the investigation or rescue. And I remember driving to 35th and Pershing. It's in like a Latino neighborhood, so I kind of fit in because on the south side of Chicago, back in 2007, in that neighborhood, a lot of people. I remember when cops would stop me occasionally, they'd confuse me with a Mexican, and I'm Chinese, obviously, but I've got like relatively dark skin, so they just assume I was Mexican.
yeah.
Same thing. And when I was living in like 72nd Street in like a black neighborhood, everyone always thought I was Mexican. So I did kind of fit in, or at least I thought I could fit in with the surrounding community because they always place slaughterhouses and factory farms in places where there are poor communities of color. It's
Hmm.
environmental racism because rich white people don't want to live near a slaughterhouse. So I'm driving up to 35th and Pershing. I think that's the intersection in Chicago, and it's the last remaining vertebrate slaughterhouse. There's some chicken slaughterhouses, or I should say mammalian slaughterhouse. There's some like tiny little chicken slaughterhouses in Chinatown, the Ukrainian village on the north side of Chicago, and in Chinatown on the south side of Chicago. But the last remaining mammalian slaughterhouse, meaning lambs and cows, is this place called Chipetti Veal and Lamb. And I've driven by this place so many times, and I knew it was a slaughterhouse, but I didn't even dare even slow down because back in the mid 2000s, I mean, all these people were going to prison for doing this work. You got Adam Durand getting, I think, a 6-month sentence for taking a sick chicken out of a factory farm. You got Lauren Gazzola getting a 6-year prison sentence for running a website, just a website about vivisection. So
Yeah.
people were super scared. But I was a lawyer, and not only a lawyer, but an expert in the First Amendment. So I thought, surely, I should be willing to do this. At least just stop and look. I mean, we're allowed to look, we're allowed to take photographs.
Hmm.
But honestly, it scared the shit out of me. But the moment it stopped being scary was the moment I took action. The moment I think honestly, just even when I just stepped out of the car, I parked and I stepped out of the car, and then I was just in the moment,
Yeah.
And there's a lot of research on this, and this is, it's like a hippie term, mindfulness, right? But
Hmm.
a
Yeah.
lot of what triggers people's productivity and focus and even happiness is your ability just to be in the moment. Because too often we're stewing in our own heads about whatever anxieties or stresses we have. And there's something being in a really intense and even dangerous situation because you just don't have time to worry about yourself down because you're like, I'm about to walk in a place where animals are going to be killed. I need to document everything I'm saying, do everything I can to help an animal. I can't worry about my social anxiety, for example.
Yeah.
And so it changed pretty quickly. That was your experience too, right? Like it pretty quickly just
Yeah.
when you're out in
Yeah.
the field, did you just quickly realize, okay, I just have to I'm on a mission. That's it. I have to stop thinking of all this nonsense.
Well, in my experience, for one, you're there for the animals, so you have that in your head all the time, so that's propelling you. But
Mm,
another thing is, like, it's different, like, when you're solo and when you're with a team, but when you're with a
mm.
team, you realize other people
Yeah, depending
and
on you.
nor ordinarily friends of yours are counting on you.
Yeah.
So your fear starts to melt away because, um, regardless of what you're doing, you could fuck it up for everybody if
It's
you
true.
start panicking or something. And
Yep.
people could be put in pretty dangerous situations if that's the case. So you
Yeah.
just have to, like, it's like you said, you really don't have a choice.
Yeah.
I mean, it's really interesting because I think that there are people, like, we were talking to Jenny McQueen, and Jenny
Mhm.
actually couldn't really she said she didn't really remember fear. I'm not like that. I definitely
Jenny's amazing. She's
I know.
hilarious, and you totally believe her. You
Yeah,
totally believe her when she says, "Oh, yeah, fear. I don't. What's fear? Oh, yeah, fear. I remember thinking about that, but I'm not sure what that is."
like, it didn't even occur to her to be
I
scared
know.
of
She's
anything.
great.
Yeah, no, I feel the nerves, and,
Yeah.
but yeah, it's just like you said, once you get in the moment, yeah, you're just in it, and there's tasks, and so you don't really have the time anymore to, think about the fear. Um,
Yeah.
but you know what separates you, and I've met so many activists now over the years, and I mean, they all haven't expressed this to me, but I
Mm,
get the sense that a lot of activists feel like they're doing something good, but I think that they don't feel like they're going to accomplish animal liberation. You
mm,
are someone who actually believes that you can do it. You have the audacity to believe that you can do it. And that's I think that's the thing that inspires people. You
yeah.
speak in a way that we are going to do this.
Yeah.
And how did you get to that point? Because it's easy to grow really cynical.
Yeah. Yeah, honestly, I've become more cynical about my own activism. You know as well as anybody that I kind of feel like a shitty organizer. I mean, even yesterday, that definitely wasn't my best. And I
Yeah.
apologize to you before we started this call, and I apologize to you yesterday too. I also pushed back and was defensive a little bit, which I mean, people get defensive when they're criticized, and you give me some criticism, and I got a little defensive. But even though I feel much less effective than I was, say, 5, 6 years ago, I am more confident than I've ever been. The animal rights movement will succeed at its greatest dreams.
Yeah.
More confident than ever. Even what happened this morning of George Monbiot, one of the most important columnists frankly, in the nation. He might be the single most important environmental journalist in the nation. And he wrote a piece today about how you just cannot raise animals for food in a way that's ethical or sustainable. It is wrong. And it's
Yeah.
time for us to realize this. For animal lovers who are eating bacon for breakfast, for the animal charities that are sadly, in some cases, endorsing these brutal companies and practices,
Hmm.
and environmentalists to realize we will not have a future for any living beings on this planet until we
Hmm.
transition towards a plant based diet, till we transition towards a world where animals are not seen as mere commodities. And there's so many markers that change is not just happening, but happening far faster than even I would have expected. The big thing that usually makes people pessimistic is they don't see the people around them going vegan. And what they don't realize is that consumer behavior is almost always a lagging indicator.
Hmm.
The fur industry is a great example of this. And I think I've showed you this chart. Have I showed you this chart before, Jeremy, of the
Um,
mink industry up until 2017?
no, actually, I don't think you have.
Okay. Yeah, it's a great chart. I almost wish I could show it to you now. And do we have the ability to share here?
I think you can go to present if you want to
Okay,
try that.
let me see if I could
You
try
should
this
try
because
it.
it's actually worth showing. And this is going on YouTube too, right? Yeah, it's a
Yeah,
YouTube show.
it's going on YouTube, and we'll just
Um,
describe what
so
it is.
yeah, yeah, if we could even show it. I mean, the the chart is a chart of mink farming. Oh, shit, man, I'm sorry. I should have
No, no worries. I
I
did this
prepared
on
more
my
of the
last video too, where I was just fumbling around, and
yeah.
I think it makes for great
Uh,
content.
gosh, maybe it's not on my blog. I thought it was on my blog. Ba, ba, ba. Gee.
Well, one of the points that you were making,
Okay,
I
here we go.
do want to. Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, here we go. I got the image on my screen now. This is a chart of pelts being produced in the United States. Okay.
Okay.
And I'm going to present it now.
Okay.
Share screen. All right. All right. You see this?
Yep. See it.
This is basically the last 20 years of fur pelts being produced. And if you look, starting in 2000, it goes up and up and up, and it actually increases quite a lot. And this is just, I think, mink, but it's correlated with all the other industries. So
Mhm.
chinchillas, rabbits, fox, mink, but mink are the big one. Mink are the primary animal being used in fur production in the United States around the world. And as you can see, from 2000 to 2015, 16, the numbers skyrocket, right?
Yeah. They're
And
going up.
then in 2017 or 2016, it just drops off a cliff.
Yeah.
And the reason it drops off a cliff, and I'll just stop sharing now
Mhm.
because you've seen it now. The reason it drops off the cliff is because in 2017, we banned fur in Berkeley and then in San Francisco. I think it was in the same year. And then starting in 2018, we started organizing. And in 2019, we banned fur in the entire state of California. And then fur production just drops off the cliff and it gets to the point. I mean, it's like this chart is kind of astonishing. It's like a cliff. But
Mhm. Yeah.
right up till 2016, if you were just looking at consumer behavior, if all you're looking at is how many fur pelts are being produced and bought and sold in the United
Mhm.
States, you would have thought the fur industry keeps going up and up and up. We can't stop it. There's nothing that can be done about this, and we're screwed.
Mhm.
And yet in 2019, you go from almost 4 million pelts across the country to almost none. It's like dropping off the cliff. And the reason is consumer behavior is a lagging indicator. It follows social change. Because, and this is one of the fundamental things I think activists need to learn. Most activists have this neoliberal mentality. That's a fancy word that political scientists use, neoliberalism. And the idea about neoliberalism is usually used as a bad word, but it's actually just a descriptive word from a social scientific perspective. What neoliberalism is is a theory of social and political change based on markets, dollars and
Mhm.
cents. So Bill Clinton thought, the way we solve the problem of poverty is changing the markets, basically, increasing market opportunities, deregulating. If we deregulate everything, then, the invisible hand of capitalism will allocate goods and services effectively and efficiently, and everyone will rise up. And this is a theory, and it's whether you like it or not, it's just a scientific theory. And the key thing is that scientific theory is increasingly being proven to be wrong. That the course of human civilization is not just dictated by dollars and cents,
Mhm.
but by what's in our hearts and minds. So for example, you have all these coal miners in West Virginia voting for Donald Trump, even though Donald Trump is going to cut taxes for the rich and decrease healthcare benefits for coal miners in West Virginia.
Mm.
And you might ask, why the hell are they doing that? Well, it's because they're motivated by, and they want to push our civilization in a direction that's not just about vindicating their economic interests, but their social and political and moral interests, their identity of who they are. And they think, well, Trump's probably going to take their healthcare away and give tax cuts to the billionaires who are exploiting them in coal mines. He'll also fight for their identity. He'll stand for the poor white guy in West Virginia. And the reason this translates to animal rights is so often people look at the dollars and cents in the markets. They look at kind of the fact that, the vegan meats aren't increasing, the fact that per capita meat consumption is increasing, the fact that veganism is more or less static, and they think, oh man, people aren't buying vegan products. No. That's not what matters. What matters, as we saw in the fur industry, is whether we're cultivating a movement with a power to challenge the entire system. And that's what happened in fur. Even
Mhm.
as fur sales are going up and up and up, at that same time, you know what else is going up? Anti-fur activism is going up and
Mhm.
up and
Yeah.
up over that same 20-year time period. And it proves that in the battle between dollars and cents and hearts and minds will win out, because that's
Mhm.
exactly what happened to fur. And it'll happen with meat too.
What do you think happened in terms of the fur campaign? So, like, there was this long history of the ALF targeting the
Yeah.
fur industry, and this is a good tie-in because I want to ask you about this. So, it's one of the things that separates you from a lot of other activists in terms of like even just what they read. Um, you're often citing social research,
Mhm.
other social justice movements, and even like like I remember when I arrived in California, I think you had just read the Elon Musk book. So you're
Mhm.
not only just reading animal rights books, and I'm a big
You
Peter
just
Young
outed me.
fan. Yeah, I did.
You just outed me as reading Elon Musk.
Yeah. And Peter Young, who, I like a lot, makes the same point in his books. Like activists should be reading, he cites all these
Yeah.
other books, like books about how to influence people. Um,
Yeah.
So first of all, like, what should we read? And then what do you think happened? Because the fur industry was being consistently targeted, and then there was like a big drop off. And
Mhm.
as you showed in that chart, the fur industry was going up and up and up until the California fur ban, if that's the reason.
Yeah. So the answer to the question, what we should read, comes in two parts. The simple answer is Damon Centola's book, Change: How to Make Big Things Happen, because I just think it's the best summary of the modern social scientific literature on how to make big things happen. It's a great book. Everyone should just go read it. Just literally stop listening to this podcast, put it down, read the book.
Wait,
It's an
no,
amazing book.
no, listen to the rest of it, and then go get it. Yeah,
All right, listen to this podcast and only this podcast. But honestly,
and
the
yours.
second and bigger point, which is kind of a meta level point, is just read everything. I mean, you
Mhm.
are going to find out what your passion is. There's someone out there who's going to read about audio, how to
Yeah.
use microphones and audio technology to most effectively advocate for animals, and will give everyone in the animal rights movement advice about what mics to use, what music to use, what sort of podcasts are doing well, what sort of podcasts are not doing well. And he will read all these books that you and I might think, this is irrelevant. Why would I want to read about audio? This is so boring. I don't need to learn about what microphone to use, or what sort of audio quality is necessary to get a podcast to go viral. But
Mhm.
he or she or they are going to have incredible influence on the animals because they're passionate about audio and they're reading about it. Someone else could read about journalism, and dive deep into what's happening in the journalism industry and help us figure out what are the outlets we really need to target, because, you know, apologies to your former employer, the NPRs of the world are kind of dying. No
Mhm.
one's reading and listening to NPR anymore. And so someone is going to go out there and read about the modern media markets to figure out what is the right platform for us to really pursue. Should we be seeking the New York Times or YouTube, and trying to convince Mr. Beast?
Mhm.
And the meta level lesson is, whatever you're interested in, you've got to dive deep. And it's surprising how much impact you can have just from doing the goddamn reading. Because so many
Mhm.
people are just stuck on Twitter and Instagram and don't even bother to click the link. Like,
Yeah.
you should be the sort of person. So, George Monbiot just wrote an article today on why humane meat is a scam. It's honestly just one of the best pieces I've ever read about humane meat, because it talks about how the world's oldest animal charity, the Royal Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, is essentially endorsing animal torture. And there's no way to prevent cruelty to animals while you're killing and eating animals. It just can't be done. And it's a beautiful piece that should be read.
Mhm.
But not only should you read that piece, and a lot of people won't even read that piece. They'll just like see it on Twitter and say like, "Oh, cool, there's a prominent environmental journalist. Yeah, I'm going
Mhm.
to retweet that. I'm not even going to read the article." It's like,
Yeah.
no, you should read the article. Read the
Yeah, we do
goddamn
that a
article.
lot, by the way. Just retweet a headline. We should actually
Yeah,
read the
just because you
story.
just like the headline. It's a great headline. I'm not saying it's not a great
Yep.
headline. I mean, we love it and it supports our cause and it's identity affirming and great. But
Mhm.
you want to understand what his actual point is. What is the evidence behind this proposition? Because if you're going to argue and persuade people and have the impact that George Monbiot has had, you got to know what he knows. And that means doing the reading. But it's not just reading the actual article. George has a number of links in his article to video footage he's reviewed, reports he's looked at, other references he's using to cultivate his thinking. And one of the things I've always done since I was a kid, when the internet just started, is I clicked all the links and I read those too. And when I saw a reference to a book, I'd write down in my notes. I mean, I do it all the time. I'll like write down in my notes, "Hey, I got to find this book and go read it."
Mhm.
Um, and I spend a lot of time just reading and doing the homework. And this is advice Ezra Klein gave too when he left Vox to join the New York Times. I mean, he's probably the most important vegan opinion writer in the nation.
Mhm.
I think that's.
Oh,
Do, do you think? Do you think it's fair?
by the way, like, I've sat through all of your interviews so far, for your
Mhm.
YouTube channel, and I think Ezra Klein has come up in every single one of them. You are
Yeah,
such an Ezra Klein fanboy.
I'm a huge.
Like, I'm
I'm
gonna
a
make a
complete
bingo
fanboy.
card for yeah, yeah, yeah.
Dude, having him on my podcast was one of the just greatest honors of my life, and we should invite him again.
Amazing.
I think he might be
Oh,
willing to do it.
absolutely. Yeah.
He is he's such an elegant thinker because he does such a good job of taking extremely complicated, sophisticated ideas and distilling them into simple concepts that everyone can understand. Because
Mhm.
most people can't do breadth and depth, and he does them both. He does both breadth and depth, and that's a rare skill. I don't have it, for example. I think I'm pretty good at depth. I'm not as good at breadth as he is. I can't kind of engage a wide audience in a simple way. I mean, even the concept of the green pill. I mean, that was something he coined.
Mhm.
He wanted to figure out what's an elegant way to describe the experience of recognizing for the first time that animal suffering matters and it's everywhere. And he said it's like taking the green pill. It's as if just like in the Matrix, you take I think it's a red pill, and
Mhm.
suddenly you
Yeah.
realize the world around you is very dark. When you take the green pill and you realize life around us is being decimated, brutalized, colonized everywhere,
Mhm.
the world becomes very dark. And it's such a beautiful, elegant concept. And he's come a lot of concepts like that. But anyways,
Yeah, and it's
I mean, Ezra
happening
Klein,
by, your friends. Your friends
yeah.
are doing it, your loved ones,
Yeah,
and
it's fucked up. You start
yeah,
realizing everyone around you is committing atrocities. They're part of,
yeah.
the greatest genocide in history, numerically and in terms of the degree of the suffering they're inflicting on other living beings. But one of the things Ezra Klein said that made him kind of able to stand out in this sea of voices and journalism and blogs that was erupting starting in around 2000 with the internet is he just always did the reading, and
Mhm.
it's sometimes it's not that hard. Why do you think people don't do the reading? I've always been confused because I am just the sort of person who can't stop myself from doing the reading. Like I'm such like a dork about details and like I always want to like I mean even legal cases. I mean, so we've been helping Animal Rising out, and every time they talk about a case, I'm like, send me all the documents. I want to look at them
Mhm.
all.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
what do you think it is that prevents people from doing the reading?
I think it's, our short attention span. And also, I don't know, like, for instance, the way that I got into reading, and I've told you, like, I'm a big Haruki Murakami fan,
Mm,
and Haruki Murakami reignited my love of reading. And one of the reasons for that is because he was referencing all this additional, it's kind of like you just mentioned in the article about the RSPCA, that there's all these additional ways to go even deeper. So if you read Murakami, you want to read Kafka and Dostoevsky. And I think you just have to sort of like, you have to, first of all, like, create the space for yourself, to not be distracted and to kind of sit quietly. It's almost like meditation. You
yeah,
meditate a lot, and I think that's helped you a lot. You've said that. Um,
yeah,
and just to
it's
be
life
able to,
changing.
yeah, just to be able to think and have that space. I think it's just hard for people to do it. We're all rushed around, and it's understandable that people can't read. You know, um,
What's your favorite Murakami novel? I've read a
uh,
couple of his books,
it's
but I'm trying to
probably
remember.
it's probably the Wind Up Bird Chronicle, because that's the one I first read,
Mm,
and it's just extraordinary. Um,
interesting.
Yeah,
What
I
makes it so good?
it's just like you get sucked into this world like instantly. It starts out with, he is just making spaghetti and he gets a phone call and it's just this mysterious woman. And all of a sudden from there, he's got a missing cat. He goes wanders to find the cat. And I don't want to spoil the book, but it just takes you on this like incredible, intense journey, I would say. And I think what is interesting, and I don't know if this is just a theory, but his the main characters are usually basically, I feel like it's like him, you know,
Hmm.
and he's just this kind of like very flat, kind of like level guy. And you can kind of see yourself in this character. So you just feel like you're going through this yourself.
Mhm.
I'm not sure if that's why. Um,
Interesting.
but yeah, he's also, he's been inspired by, right? And I know you were really inspired by
Dostoevsky.
Dostoevsky.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the first times that I met you, actually, I remember you were doing an interview with Vegan Linked, this guy
Hmm.
Jeff, and yeah, we're at this cool vegan pizza place, and
Yeah.
you were
The
talking
local place.
about, yeah, you were talking about Dostoevsky and how much that he had inspired you, and how you had
Mhm.
found an animal rights quote um, in Dostoevsky. It may not have been intended that way. Do you remember that quote, by the way? I mean, of
Yeah.
course you
It's,
do.
no, it's there's nothing more beautiful in the world than a little bird. And he's comparing birds to children and how we should love the children of the world, but also love the little birds of the world.
Hmm.
See if I can
Interesting.
find the exact quote.
Yeah. And while you're doing that, you've referenced the RSPCA campaign a few times and Animal Rising, who I know has really, they put together this just amazing investigation where they looked at over 40 farms, maybe 45 farms they
45, yeah.
investigated. And it's just incredible work. And I asked you why you think we can do this. And you were down on your own activism, but you said you've never been more inspired. And is it because of groups like Animal Rising and individuals you meet?
Yeah, I think that I already knew it was possible to do this. I just think, I don't know. I mean, I just got a mental block and just a psychological block right now because I'm just not. So what I'm saying is not even that I'm that crucial to doing this because I mean, obviously, like Animal Rising is doing this work and they don't need me, and other people, including people like you, I think are doing this work, and I don't want to. I don't, maybe I shouldn't have been sharing this, but
Well,
I know you're doing this work, and it's without me. You don't need me, but
well, I kind of disagree.
the
I do think we need you. Like
hmm,
I'll say this, and here's why I say that. Um, I have never, and this is not me just trying to heap praise upon you, but I've met a
yeah,
lot of hardworking people in my day. NPR, the animal
mhm.
rights movement. I have never met someone who works harder than you. Never,
No,
ever.
thank you.
Yeah, you work from sun up to sundown. You squeeze in 2 workouts a day sometimes. You're always, like we would go work out together and I'd be running next to you. I remember I had one day where I outran you and and you were like, "Yeah, I'm like chilling today."
I think I
And
remember that.
I was so
Yeah.
proud. I was like, "Well, I got him."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, I've
you're
been running for 20 years, so it's more than that,
yeah.
30
Well,
years.
you're in incredible shape, and I think that's important. Like you're actually you're sculpting your body to hone your mental mind. Like so,
Yeah. No, it's
you're
true.
exercising all parts of your body and your brain, your mind, and you don't stop working. And that's like what we keep referencing of what happened yesterday was I was giving you shit. Well, I know you like to you know say a nice thing, but don't say a nice thing. You were working your ass off yesterday, and I was
Yeah.
like pestering you. Um, and that's a like you're just an amazingly hard worker, and I hope that people realize that because, for instance, I mean, I'm part of your team, but I'm not always even knowing what you're doing. And
Yeah.
you told me what you were doing yesterday, and it was this long list. And
Yeah.
this is more than most people will do in probably their entire lifetime in
I
animal
don't know about
rights.
that.
You
Yeah.
do.
I mean,
Sure. Yeah,
I
yeah.
appreciate you saying that. And I mean, hard work is something that matters a lot to me. And yeah, if you think I'm hard worker, I wish you had met my mom. 'Cause she
Yeah,
was
I
the
knew
one
you
who
were gonna
taught me.
bring up your
Yeah,
mom.
she was amazing. It's kind of mind blowing to me because it's just the amount of stress she had. And I take risks and obviously there's a lot of sacrifices I made, but I still think compared to my mom and my dad, I haven't done much because I mean they flew to a completely new country. They lost all their connections to family. Were surrounded by strangers, and my mom comes to this country and has lived on a tropical island her entire life, and comes out of an airplane into the wintry snow of the Midwest and thinks she's gone into hell. You know, it's like literally
Yeah.
imagine living your entire life never feeling cold because you grew up in
Mhm.
Taiwan, and then coming out into a snowstorm and realizing, holy shit,
Mhm.
this
Mhm.
is what it feels like to freeze. I mean, it's just you never even had that experience, and then having no friends, no family members, like crying on your wedding night because you
Oh.
have no friends on your wedding and you're marrying this person. I mean, my dad's an amazing person, but they barely even know each other. And then
Oh,
doing
wow.
this all because, and I think, both my parents did this because they knew there was a future they were fighting for, not just for themselves, but for their family, for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and my mom, I mean, I don't understand how she got in, all she got in, like, because she was responsible for the household cleaning, doing all the laundry, cooking for all of us. And she was an entrepreneur who started multiple businesses. She started the largest Kumon franchise in the state of Indiana. She founded the Chinese school in Indianapolis.
Mhm.
Just was always had all these projects. She was like an accountant who like worked part-time in H&R Block because she just wanted H&R Block resources so she could do our
My
taxes for
respect for her
free.
just went way up doing the
Yeah.
accounting.
Yeah, she did everything. My mom was like my dad is a specialist. I mean, he's a really smart dude, but he's just a scientist. My mom was just like hardworking and everything. And
What did
yeah,
your
I
mom
always felt very lazy compared to her, honestly, and I still do. And I appreciate what you're saying to me, but what I said to you yesterday is true. I'm hardworking, but I'm just not as focused, and I don't have the energy I once had. I'm 43 years old, and it's not the age. I'm old in terms of activist years, and I'm just kind of getting grizzled and cynical a little bit. And I always have to, honestly, if I didn't meditate as much as I did, I think I would have left the movement like 10 years ago. But
I
meditation has played such a big role in just me being able to kind of heal myself
I have
and know
this
thyself.
I have this friend that I won't name, but he's a really amazing activist, and he is always telling me that he's down to, like, fumes. Like, his health
Mm,
isn't great, and he's always saying, I've had to decline this activism or this activism." And every day, almost every day, he's talking to me, telling me, like, 3 fucking events that he did that day. And
mm,
it's just incredible. And I told him the
yeah.
other day, I was like, you're telling me, like, for one, little advice for you, Wayne, at some point, take a break and get your you know, get yourself feeling good. Because yeah, if this is you, working less or, not focused, it's incredible. So
Mm,
yeah, it's not meant to just heap praise on you, but I'm just trying to emphasize that you are vital to the movement. Obviously not
yeah.
any
Everybody
one
is.
individual. Yeah, obviously not any one individual is, but you're obviously a huge cog in this wheel.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and you're very humble too. I like that about you too. You always call yourself this dork who's just like, yeah, you're like
Yeah.
one of the coolest people I know. Like, look
Bro,
at
have you
your
seen this hair?
it looks good. Look at your fucking
No,
Instagram, man. You
it
got
looks
this.
like a porcupine combined with a rhinoceros, you know?
No, it looks
Some
good.
weird mutant blend. No,
You're so humble.
I don't
Yeah.
know. I mean,
Well, listen, I like this was supposed to be an interrogation, right? Okay. Look, this is
all right,
my
let's see it.
thumbnail, okay?
Oh shit. Oh
You
shit.
give me a scared look.
This is this is worse than China, man. This is
Give me a
this is
scared
worse than
look.
the Chinese
I don't want to
police
make this
interrogated me and accused me
thumbnail.
of espionage. They actually did do something like
Look,
this. There was this big light and they had me sitting. I didn't even realize there were still chairs.
you you got to give me
There are
the
these
scared
chairs with
face.
these wooden things that those wooden stocks that come down and there's like little holes for your hands so they clamp down your hands.
Oh my god.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
they had me like sitting like this, and I got these wooden stocks coming down. You know, I don't. The funny thing is, I think they didn't lock it. The other thing is, when I was in a Chinese jail, they had me in solitary, and they made me seem really scared, or they wanted. I think they were trying to scare me and intimidate me because they were trying to get me to confess and say, "Yeah, you're a spy for the U.S. government or whatever." And I wasn't a spy, so I didn't. I was just like, "Dude, I was just trying to save dogs. That's all I'm here for." And so they put me in this solitary cell, and they forgot to lock it. Is that funny? I was like,
You're just
I mean, I
like,
couldn't have actually escaped because I would have had to walk through the police station and they would have stopped me. And
right,
everybody
right.
knew who I was. Like everybody in the entire city knew who I was at that point. But it was pretty funny because they're like, "You are a bad man. What did you do? You've done terrible things in you know, you have to sit in the stocks and now you're going to be in solitary. And it's like, dude, you forgot to lock the door.
You saved Oliver, is what you did. Your dog
Yeah.
Oliver. Let's give them the context. You went to China to rescue dogs from the dog meat trade. And
Hmm.
yeah, I wanted to jump in when you were talking about your mother, like just to point out that you did that. And that's incredible
Yeah.
that you flew to another country to do that. I mean, you're Chinese, but that was flying to a foreign land basically for you.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
was. I guess I was fighting for the future of my family and I didn't even realize it yet.
Yeah,
You know,
you
I
were.
didn't know I was going to adopt one of the dogs, but I think after we took him out, and especially after, because we got arrested, and then for a few days when I was being interrogated in jail, we thought the dogs might be dead, and it was such an awful experience.
Yeah.
I mean, that was like, talk about testing your mental fortitude. That was one of the hardest experiences of my life because it wasn't just the pressure of knowing. I mean, the Chinese government locks people up with no
Mhm.
charges for decades, sometimes, including Americans. For dumb offenses like drug offenses, they just lock you up, and especially when they're accusing you of espionage, that's a very serious charge. So
Mhm.
I was, obviously worried. All right, maybe I'm just never going home again. They were like parading me around the city, and I got the shit beaten out of me. They brought me out to a mob that like assaulted me. And this old guy kicked me and
This
spat. I
old
mean, all
guy
these people
kicked
were like
you?
spitting on me and stuff.
Oh my god.
But through the entire experience, the thing that was just gnawing at our soul, or at least my soul, because they separated me from Cristobal and Julian, so we couldn't see each other. I was in solitary. Was we had left these 3 dogs, and I wasn't sure if they were starving to death. I wasn't sure if they had been sent to a dog meat trader and they were killed. I had no idea what happened to them. And yeah, when we got back and I opened that bathroom door and Oliver and Pao and Lau were still there, I just started crying and I knew I had to take one of them home and make them part of the family. He has been part of the family. And I mean, I think honestly, that's the other thing. It's like meditation is one thing that has helped me sustain myself over the last 20 years. But the other thing is just being around the animals you save because it's pretty transformative every day to wake up. I mean, I
Yeah.
woke up this morning, gave Oliver a hug, and just reminded myself that miracles can happen. This dog
Yeah.
was one of millions that should have been killed to be eaten. He should have
Yeah.
had his skull smashed in, his throat slit, thrown into a vat of boiling oil so his fur could be removed, and he should have been
Mhm.
eaten. One of 20,000 dogs in a single week in China. And instead, he's living, you know, maybe not the best life a dog could have because I do feel guilty sometimes. I mean, if I didn't do activism, I could just spend all day with him. And that's actually what I prefer to do. I've said this many times.
Mhm.
My
Mhm.
dream life is to be out somewhere in the countryside and just run around with Oliver every day of my life and not have to
Oh,
worry
that
about
sounds
helping
nice.
other animals.
Yeah.
But
We'll get there one
but
day.
the life he has is much better than he could have had. He gets to the park a few times a week. We go to the beach. He gets to dig holes. He sits with me in the office. I didn't bring him in the conference room today, but he's in the office across this co-working space. And that's a pretty good life for a dog that was intended to be on someone's plate.
He's pretty aware. I mean, I know you can't really answer this, but do you think that Oliver has a sense he was rescued by you? I think he knows what he was rescued from. Do you think
Yeah.
he
Oh, he knows.
knows do you think he knows what his pops does for a living?
I think he knows for sure what he was rescued from because
Mhm.
this is why he's so scared of everybody. I mean, because
Yeah.
he knows what human beings are capable of, and it's a
Yeah,
dark
he's
world out
scared.
there. If you're for the little ones of this earth, it's a dark and scary world,
Mhm.
and the
One time I
smart
was
ones, yeah, the smart ones realize that, and Oliver's smart.
Yeah, one time I was, we were sleeping on your floor as we were doing, and uh, we were watching another dog that day, and
Mhm.
a dog came up and was sleeping by my feet the whole night, and I thought it was Oliver, and it was like the
Mhm.
best feeling. So I know how it wasn't Oliver; it's the other
Mm. Was
dog.
that Pal?
It was Pal, and I was
Yeah,
I was
Pal's a good
devastated.
kid.
I love Pal though,
I was
but
I
I
was
thought,
supposed to hang out with Pal this week, and it just got canceled
oh
because of
really?
Priya. Yeah, because Priya apparently is a better place for Pal than my home. No, I'm kidding, I'm kidding. It's actually because 'cause I'm going down to Happy Hen. Oh, shit, that's right, I have to tell probation I'm going down to Happy Hen this weekend. I forgot.
Oh yeah,
Yeah, I'm doing a fundraiser at Happy Hen, and, originally, they were gonna have Mike, Julian's husband, was gonna bring Pal up here, to stay with me because Pal is one of the 3 dogs we saved from China. He's my best bud. I love that guy so much.
yeah. Pal's awesome.
But we decided Happy Hen wasn't a good environment for him, so he's not gonna go with us to Happy Hen. Too many other animals around, and
Mhm,
Julian's
mhm.
scared he's gonna, like, attack a chicken or something, so
Yeah. Um, is it okay to publish this before you go there, that people know you're there? I don't know.
yeah, I don't think he
Yeah,
cares.
it's okay. Alright.
Yeah, I'll
Okay,
be there
cool.
on Sunday. I mean, I think
Yeah.
Happy Hens advertised it, but honestly, I
Oh,
don't
okay.
know.
Okay, interesting.
I'm
Well,
actually supposed to speak. I don't even what do you think I should speak about?
hmm, Ridgeland, you know, that's
Yeah,
coming up.
maybe.
Yeah. I mean, we'll talk about that. I do wanna ask you another question first, though, because I think this is funny. One time we were in an airport, and there's this, long turnstile thing that you gotta go through, and I duck under the rope, and just to make the thing shorter, and then you travel all through the thing because you're this person who won't
Yeah, I walked like
break the
200 feet
rules.
out of the way just to follow the rules.
Yeah. So how does a guy that won't break the rules at an airport end up going into factory farms and rescuing animals, knowing that even though I know that you don't think that that is wrong and that that's not a crime, but you know
Yeah.
that the world, many people do think that.
Yeah, it's like Jean-Jacques Rousseau and John Locke said hundreds of years ago to, in many ways, launch the Enlightenment, or at least a certain kind of moral transition in the Enlightenment, that sometimes there's a higher law. I do believe in follow the laws. I do believe in following the laws, I should say. And there's um there's the laws of man and there's the laws of the universe. And the laws of man are fallible. People make lots of mistakes. You look at human history and we've established all sorts of rules. I mean, there's a law in the books that would have forbidden anyone of my race from coming to this country, becoming a citizen for 100 years.
Yeah.
I think we now realize that law wasn't such a great law. And in fact, it violated some of the higher principles because at the same time we had this law in the books, in theory, we also had a law in the books that said every person in this country is entitled to equal protection under the law. It's like, wait, how does that work? I mean, you're saying we got equal protection, but you're also saying get out of here, chink. That's those two things don't make sense. You can't have those two ideas in the same founding document, yet they were there, or not in the same founding document. In fact, the founding document had equal protection because after the Civil War, we had the Equal Protection Clause that was then kind of enshrined by the Supreme Court in state government as well. But 20 years after the 14th Amendment was passed, the U.S. Congress goes before the people and says, you know what, actually, let's make an exception for Chinese people. They passed a law called the Chinese Exclusion Act, and they were wrong. There was a higher law, and we understand that now. We understand that, wow, that was kind of messed up. You can't say equal protection under the law and just literally ban every single person who's Chinese from this country.
Well, the
And the
animal
same is true
industry
of
might
animals.
have might have wished that happened. They wouldn't have
Oh,
had
I'm
to deal with
sure.
you.
I'm sure they would. I mean, the animal industry, I think, the animal industry is not just cutting corners and jumping the turnstile or just jumping the ropes and cutting in line. We didn't when we jumped the ropes, we weren't cutting the line. It was completely empty. So you just kind of
Oh, yeah,
jumped over the
yeah,
ropes
yeah,
and said,
I wouldn't do
yeah,
that.
you were
I'm
just
not
saying like,
I'm not
hey, I
a dick.
don't why are you walking all the way over there and then all the way back when there's no one there anyways? Like
Yeah.
but
It's funny.
I mean, the animal agriculture industry is just, and including Ridgeland. I mean, these are companies they're lawless companies. They break the laws left and right. They use the power they have not just to abuse animals, but to distort and destroy the most fundamental principles of the nation. Things like the First Amendment, things like equal protection of the law, the Due Process Clause, the fundamental right that all persons have to life and liberty. All these things are being trampled on by large corporations. And if we care about democracy, if you care about your own well-being, I mean, setting aside what you think about dogs or cats or chickens or cows, if you care about your own well-being and your own rights, you better fight because, it's as they say, they might come for someone weaker for you now, but someday they're going to come for you too. And if we don't all say, when the Constitution says every person has a fundamental right to life and liberty, that means every person. That means a
Mhm,
black person, it means a Chinese person, it means a Jewish person, it means a white person. And guess what? It means a dog or a cat too.
mhm,
Because under the law, there's two concepts, persons and property. And you cannot convince me, or frankly, anyone else in this nation, including the lawyers who have ruled against us, the judges who have ruled against us. You cannot even come close to convincing or persuading anyone with a straight face that a dog is no different than a piece of garbage. Those are
Mhm.
different sorts of things. One is
Well
a living sentient being with rights, and the other is property.
well, we did have a case where, a I believe a pig was compared to a dented can. Is that right?
Mhm. And
Yeah,
a chicken
so
was considered compared to cellular matter.
that's right. Yeah, Judge
Good old
Basalia
Laura
did that.
Passalia. Mhm.
Yeah. That's a shame too, because they know better.
Yeah.
They absolutely know better.
Yeah, isn't it weird how seemingly intelligent people in positions of power can make these absurd arguments? I mean, like, what do you think is going through, like, Vaughn Christensen's head or Laura Passalia's head when they compare dogs or pigs or chickens to dented cans and cellular matter? I mean, do they believe their own BS? I don't
I don't think so. I think they're just trying to win the well,
the
and
argument.
obviously Pasalia is a judge, so she wasn't trying to win the
Mhm.
case, but,
She
um,
kinda was, even though she wasn't supposed
sh
to be. I mean,
yeah, she was trying to win the case.
yeah.
She had picked a side, at least from
Mhm.
my perspective, was very clear that she had a side, and,
Yeah.
it wasn't your side. It might have
Yeah.
been my she seemed to be
She like
okay with
you.
me. I think because they saw me as ineffective.
I should have hired you. I should have said, "All right, he's my lawyer now." So Judge Passalia, listen to him.
Yeah, I was like, when they kicked me out at the end, I thought maybe, what, did they see me as a threat all of a sudden? Like I was proud.
Yeah.
It's like, oh God, because I
Yeah.
really thought that they just kept me around because they're like, this guy has no legal background. He's fine. Whatever,
Yeah. You
leave
were
him
the
alone.
last man standing too. They kicked everyone else out, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, I was your
Like
paralegal,
Stefan got
so
kicked out, and then Murray got kicked out, and then you got kicked out, and then it was just me.
and it
Me
was
just
just
standing in the
you to
courtroom.
face the system, which is, how I saw you from the very beginning in North Carolina, standing alone, facing the system. I mean, you had activists backing
Yeah.
you; they were in the courtroom, but and that's what's really impressive. And I think that is one of the most inspiring things about you is that you have used these court cases to your advantage. Um,
Mhm.
it's been, yeah, it's probably the stroke of genius that you've had. I mean, I know it wasn't like completely original, but a lot of people weren't trying this. Um,
They weren't. Yeah. And again, just comes from doing the reading. I mean, it's
doing the reading.
you can call it a stroke of genius, or you can call it stealing other people's ideas. I mean, I literally just read the letter from a Birmingham jail and said, "Oh, this is a good idea." I mean, honestly,
Well,
have you read
yeah,
that? If you haven't
I
read it, read it.
I should
It's
read
really
it.
good.
I
No,
I
read
may
it.
have in
Like, seriously,
college.
after this conversation, read it. It's so good. It's a
I will
really,
read
really
it.
good letter.
I
Anyone who's
had
listening to this podcast, it's just well written. I mean, King was just a great writer. I mean, he's a really, really compelling writer, and it teaches you a lot about activism.
I had during college this history professor, and I don't remember his name, but he was like one of the rare, like, I mean, I'm not going to say like the professors weren't all good, but you know, he was one of the ones that would really challenge you and make you do the
Mm,
reading. And I would be willing to bet that I read it during that time.
yeah.
But maybe I didn't because I don't remember. And
Mm,
if it's as powerful as you say, I
yeah.
probably would remember it. So yeah, I'm going to read that right after this.
This is at
Um,
UNC, right?
yeah, yeah. Well, I
I
went
still
to
can't believe
UNC
you went to
Wilmington.
UNC even though
No,
and
it was
somehow you
UNC
ended up a Duke
Wilmington.
fan.
I didn't go to UNC Chapel Hill. That would have been blasphemy. Although I did work for UNC actually. I was technically a UNC employee when I worked for WUNC,
No,
and
but all the UNCs are the same. They're all part of the same system. You're trying
they're
to kinda
part of
get out of this, and like, this is like such a sniveling excuse. You betrayed Duke and you know it.
it.
No,
It-
because 'cause they're all part of the same system, right? They're all UNC is one system.
I have an even worse
So you can't
confession. You want to hear this?
alright, let's hear it.
One time in a thrift store, I wanted to do something.
Oh, shit.
I'm not
Oh,
going to
shit.
talk
It's coming
about what
out.
I wanted to do at UNC,
Getting
but
dark.
I I bought a shirt that had the UNC logo on it because I was undercover and I needed
Oh,
to blend in with
wow.
those terrible
Well, those
Carolina fans.
heathens. Yeah,
Yeah, I
yeah. I mean,
all
honestly,
I
they're hardly even people. UNC fans,
no.
I don't even know if they're sentient, like,
Well, I don't know why they have personhood and animals
yeah,
don't.
yeah, that's UNC. You should start a campaign.
You
Just
know,
like
my
everyone's against fetal personhood, against animal personhood, against UNC personhood. You just go to your alma mater and hold a sign.
you
You
know,
are not a person.
here's another bad thing I'm gonna say. Like, our first interview, I criticized a lot of the NPR stations that I had. Well, WUNC was one of the most well run that I ever worked at, and
Mm,
all those people there
yeah.
are amazing. despite the fact that they all gave me shit about being a Duke fan. And
Nice.
I remember even one day, like we would like record these segments, and the host of that day would come in to record this like little intro. He got down, he said, he just with a very straight face, Coach K today announced that he is apologizing for, I can't remember what. It was just hilarious. But I have those guys, texting me all the time when Duke and Carolina play. It's finally
Nice.
dropped off because you know what? They're mean. I'm
Nice.
magnanimous. Okay, when Carolina
Yeah.
does well, I'm like, that's fine. Oh, you
Yeah.
met Alan, my buddy Alan Kong. I
Did
don't know
mean
if you
Allen.
remember
He's a
that.
UNC fan, right? Yeah.
Yeah, he's a hardcore UNC fan. Actually, when Duke and Carolina played in the Final Four, Alan and I were
A couple years
texting
ago.
with each other. And you know
Yeah.
what? I'm going to give Alan some credit. He was like, sorry about that, Jeremy. Like, he was really sweet about it when Duke lost.
Yeah. That was a tough game. I
Coach
remember
K's
that game.
last. Yeah, it was Coach K's last game. That was
Yeah.
devastating. I'm sure
Mind
that
blown.
the audience right now is enthralled with my.
Well, I mean, one area that Duke, yeah, I mean, you got to know about basketball. I mean, one thing I learned, I actually started learning more about sports, partly just because, I mean, it eventually became intrinsically interesting. But if you want to kind of relate to ordinary people, you have to have some interests that ordinary people also have. So, like everything
Yeah,
from watching movies to following sports, I think it's a good idea because homophily is just this basic principle of human persuasion. And homophily is a fancy academic term for the idea that likes like. That's
yeah,
it. Likes like. It
yeah.
means, in other words, you like people who are similar to you. So if you're a Duke fan, you meet another Duke fan, you're
Hmm.
going to like them more.
Oh
Or if
yeah,
you're just a basketball fan and you know about basketball, I mean, even just these conversations we can have, we can bond over that because we both watch basketball. And I mean, I don't watch as much as you do, and I don't know as much as you do, but I do follow it. And
yeah. We
and
talk about it.
especially
Yeah,
our brother Kyrie Irving, the
yeah.
vegan from Duke. That's one area where I think Duke's definitely got UNC beat. Don't they have like a couple of vegans? Aren't there like I'm trying to think who else from Duke.
Oh, I can't think of another vegan, honestly. Maybe there is.
Again, Chris Paul's not a Dookie. No, he went to like
No, he went
Wake
to Wake.
Forest or something.
He
Yeah.
did
Okay.
play under Coach K on the American,
The Olympic
the
team.
Team
Yeah.
USA.
Okay. So Chris
So yeah,
Paul, Kyrie Irving. I thought there was another Duke grad who was vegan, like a basketball player.
I can't. I think
Oh,
I
never
would.
mind. Well, Kyrie Irving's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
he's probably the most skilled basketball player of the last 20 years. I mean,
He's
there's some
amazing.
crazy videos of his handle. It's like unbelievable. And I
Oh,
don't even really appreciate basketball, but the way he can move with the ball is unbelievable. It's like
yeah.
kind of
They
crazy
lost
that someone
last
has that sort
night.
of
I don't know.
skill.
Did you see that? They
I know I did
lost.
see that. Yeah.
Oh
I don't
well.
know. And Kyrie
Next.
did have a terrible series, actually.
He did.
He
It could have been
sucks.
that
So,
vegan diet, right?
oh God, no, Kyrie, what did you do to the vegans?
Yeah, come on, Kyrie. And it happened to
Yeah,
Chris Paul too. Like they were 2 up
I know.
on.
Chris Paul sucked too. Honestly, ever since he went vegan, he's kind of sucked. That's terrible.
No, no, he has not. Take that back.
Yes.
He
He kind of
has
has. I mean,
lengthened
it's
his
sad,
career.
but I
No,
mean,
he's
there
been
are some
amazing.
vegans who have risen. I mean,
No, I think
well,
you're looking at the wrong
Kyrie's played
stat.
well since he went vegan.
Look, with Chris Paul, the stat is assists. That's what you got to
Mm,
look at, not point totals.
yeah, that's true. That's
Yeah.
true because he's a point guard. So
He's a great leader.
no,
In
he
fact,
is.
like he's like one of those guys who, like, when you hear Charles Barkley or some of those guys talking about who's like the best leader, they mention Chris Paul.
Chris Paul, yeah. Well, he's
Yeah.
the president of the kind of NBA Players Association, right? So, I mean, he's
Is
been
he?
voted,
Oh yeah.
or he
Good for
was. I
him.
don't think he is anymore, but he's been, I think, for many years was the president of the entire Players Association.
Yeah.
And surprise,
You know,
surprise, the dude's also vegan because he's won the lead.
in one of I made a basketball analogy to tie it back to animal rights about how, I was saying to industry, you can throw Wayne in jail. Sorry. You can throw Wayne in
Mhm.
jail. You can throw people like Zoe in jail. It's just going to be next man up. It's like a basketball game.
Yeah, it is.
Kyrie can't play 48 minutes. Somebody's going to come in and take
Yeah.
over. Yeah. So,
Yeah. I mean, it's even better than basketball because there's no salary cap. And
yeah.
because when you take one person out, it literally attracts other people who weren't even part of the game to
Mhm.
come to court and say, like, yeah, I'm in.
Well,
It's
it's
definitely what we've seen.
interesting. We were talking about, kind of relating to people. I was just in Sweetwater, Tennessee for their Pride event, and I had a
Mhm.
bunch of PETA literature I was going to give out. And one of these guys who was a volunteer walked up and he was looking over the stuff and he was like, "Oh, I love my meat." And I was like, "Oh, well, what about the animals though? Like they love their
Mhm.
life." And so this was going to be a divide. And then suddenly we start talking sports because he's got like a University of Georgia shirt on, or
Mm,
somebody had walked up with the University of Alabama, and I used to work in Alabama, and
mm.
so we all started talking football. And
Yep.
suddenly, like, we didn't really get back to animal rights, but suddenly that guy's going to walk away anyway, feeling like
Yeah, the
I talked
positive
to a
feeling.
kindred. Yeah, I could talk to a kindred spirit.
Yeah.
Um, you know,
So
yeah,
much of what drives human behavior is just shared identity, you know?
yeah, shared identity.
When you feel like you're with people who are similar to you, you feel safe, you feel happy, you feel like you have purpose and acknowledgement of who you are.
Yeah,
And when you're around people who are different from you, and this is, I mean, one of the fundamental problems of the vegan movement. So much of the advocacy is focused on judgment and distancing ourselves from others, making ourselves seem better than others. And that
right.
might make some of us feel good in the short term, but in the long term, it's not good for the animals because we
Mm,
need to make people feel we're closer to them, not further from them.
yeah,
And that's
you and
that's a
I.
huge part of what I tried to do over the last 10 years.
Yeah, you and I have had actually like a number of conflicts
Mhm.
during our friendship.
Yeah.
Minor, like not major, but we don't always agree, and yet we always talk about
That's
it.
still coming.
Oh, I know, I know. You used to like I need my
We just
thumbnail.
need to
Give me
start
give me
wailing
a
on each other one of these days.
give me a scared face.
Oh
I need
god.
it.
That's too bright.
That's it. That's it.
Nice.
That's it. Um, yeah, yeah. But no, I actually have been trying to make this point a little bit on my channel. That your team, you have this reputation as being a cult leader, and it's ridiculous because you welcome dissent, and
Mhm.
almost like you love dissent, like you like that more,
Yeah.
when people are actually giving you honest feedback. I remember I was trying to tell you something, and I was like I was apologizing before I was telling you, and you said,
Mhm.
"Just stop saying
Yeah.
sorry, Jeremy, like,
Yeah.
you're upsetting me because I want people to be honest with me." Yeah, and,
I
yeah,
remember that.
yeah, I just
Yeah.
I want people to understand that, this is not, groupthink. Like, this is kind of like a team effort that you welcome,
Yeah.
and people are allowed to disagree with you. Now you
Yeah,
are
we
a
had some pretty
dictator,
big
though.
disagreements
You
recently
are
about the Gaza stuff internally.
yeah,
That's
internally,
but
it
that's
was
been interesting. It's like I've actually learned a lot and thought a lot. I still don't know if, I'm personally taking the right approach, but there've been a lot of disagreements recently just internally to the team. And
well,
honestly, I think part of it is just that I mean, one is just we know from a lot of research that when you encourage disagreement, you get to better answers. And again, if we're trying to
yeah,
get things right and we're trying to improve, you've got to listen to disagreement. Otherwise, you're just going to be stuck in your echo chamber. But the other thing is, I mean, as you suggested, I do just kind of like it.
yeah.
I,
I mean,
yeah, I mean, a lot of people. You had this conversation with Richard Vegan Gains,
I knew,
and
yeah,
I remember
that was so
some of the
great.
people who were listening to it who were on our team were like, "Oh my god, this is so dreadful. I'm so sorry. Like, it keeps. It's such a difficult conversation." I was like, "What? What?" It's like we had a different experience of the world. I'm like, you watched that and you thought it wasn't great. I thought it was so much fun. I mean,
It was fun.
because Richard's, yeah, it was fun. I mean, Richard's just, I mean, at first he's just a super sharp guy, so it's fun talking to him, regardless
Mhm.
of whether he's talking to you or someone else. It's just kind of fun listening to him. But second, I mean, it's kind of like working out. It's fun to have your kind of your mental body challenged in certain ways
He was
because
a
you
sparring partner.
realize, no, absolutely, no, it's like a sparring partner. Um, and it's funny. I remember one of the, I mean, I don't even know why I developed this fascination with disagreement, but one of the reasons I ended up in economics graduate school was just because, I mean, it was literally because I loved how much people argued with each other in economics. It
Mhm.
was such a weird experience for me to have just extremely smart people kind of, in some cases, outright yelling at each other. It was
Yeah.
weird. I remember there's this workshop at the University of Chicago, which has a ton of Nobel Prize winners. I think it has no more Nobel Prize winners in economics than any university in the country. And most of them are in kind of a ideological camp that's very different from my own because they're all right wing. It's like Milton Friedman, Milton
Mhm.
Friedman, the
Mhm.
shock doctrine, deregulation, capitalism. Like he has, um, I think he has this book just called Capitalism or something like that. But it's all about
Yeah.
freedom and liberty and how the government's fucked up. But and even though I disagree with almost everybody there, not everybody, there actually were a lot of progressives at the University of Chicago when I was in college and in grad school. But the thing that I really fell in love with was there's this workshop called Applications of Economics that was originally founded by this guy, Gary Becker, who won the
Mhm.
Nobel Prize in, I think, the late 90s. He's deceased now, but great guy, really, really smart. And it was a place where it didn't matter what credentials you had, what your seniority was, you were expected to say what you actually thought.
Yeah.
And it was a beautiful thing because I still remember there was a day where, oh, what was his name? I think it was Oliver Hart, this really famous economist at Harvard.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, I think he's now won the Nobel Prize. Yeah, he won the Nobel Prize in 2016, but back when I was in college, he hadn't won the Nobel Prize. But you have this guy who's this very distinguished mathematical economist at Harvard. He walks in and he starts giving his lecture, and you can see he feels very sure of himself, and he's like looking very serious and distinguished Harvard professor. And I think he got like 15 seconds into his conversation, and it was some young professor or snotty grad student who just interrupts him and says something like, "No, you're wrong." I was like,
Mhm.
"Whoa." That was weird. This guy's giving a presentation and someone just interrupts his presentation. And that workshop was notorious. Well, for two things. It was a great workshop for two reasons. One is everybody is always expected to do the reading. If you didn't come to this workshop unless you actually did the reading, there was a paper, you actually read the paper, you thought about it, you were prepared. And the second was just the candor. I mean, and it was like no bullshit. And
Mhm.
and it was really beautiful. I just thought this is so cool and I want to be a part of this. It's funny because I had no interest in economics. I just like the culture.
Mhm. Yeah.
Um, and in many ways, I almost feel like I've been trying to come back to that ever since, and I still don't think we're there. I mean, the animal rights movement is definitely not a place where people can say what they actually think. Um,
It's not, and that's why somebody like Richard is refreshing and somebody like you is
100%.
refreshing. I
Well, Richard's
yeah,
better than I am. Richard's a better,
he doesn't
he is
have
better
to.
than I am.
You have more consideration though that you have to do. Richard, he has his channel and he doesn't have to, you know, be a leader necessarily.
Mm.
Um, yeah, I that conversation was amazing. And
I think there's
I
something
watched.
different about his personality too, though. Like
Yeah.
fundamentally, I enjoy disagreeing, but I'm fundamentally a people pleaser. I don't actually like,
Yeah.
making people upset. I care about I don't think I care about what people think about me for my own sake as much, but it influences me a lot, in ways that are sometimes a little irrational
Yeah.
when I've upset someone, and Richard just does not give a shit.
He doesn't. And
He's just like he says the wildest stuff. It's just like everybody hates him. He's like, "I don't care." He's
yeah,
just like, "Come at me, bruh. I don't care." And it's
yeah.
it's pretty refreshing in the world we're living in where everyone's performing, Everyone else here is out there dancing, and Richard's just singing his own song. He doesn't give a shit.
Well, I watch Richard like damn near daily. Like I love
Huh.
Richard. And I even told you after the conversation that you had, like I could see that, he respected that you just even hung in because
Mhm.
so many I just watched
Yeah.
Richard do a
People run from
debate
him.
the other day. Yeah. He was having a debate. The first like 3 quarters of the debate was about veganism, and it was so good. Like the guy was just
Mm.
right there with him. And then they switched to Palestine and Gaza, and the guy just the other
Showed up.
person just he switched into just like yelling over Richard
Mm.
and eventually just rage quit. And
Wow.
and
That's
Richard, like,
disappointing.
and Richard has not always been perfect at his
Who was the other
interview.
person?
I forget. It's like one of the most recent videos
Hmm.
on his channel.
Let's Google
It's
it.
very interesting. Yeah, let's check it out.
I don't know who it was. Yeah,
Yeah.
and one
So
of the
that
great things about him is, everyone is like fleeing from controversial subjects, and Richard goes towards them. He's always going towards the most controversial subjects. It's the poltergeist.
Yeah, the poltergeist, yeah.
What the heck is
I
that?
didn't know him. It was really fascinating, though. I know you don't have 2 hours to spend, you're spending 2 of them with me,
Yeah.
but you should check that out. It's really fascinating. At least towards the end, you could just, like, go to the last, like, 20, 30 minutes and you'll see how they were so together, and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, this topic comes up. This just been such a hot button issue. And yeah, I feel like you're talking about how in the animal rights movement people can't say what they want to say. That is one of those topics where people are just scared.
Mhm.
And we've done interviews with people where we can't publish because people are worried about what it's gonna.
Yeah.
due to their career, and they're talking about
Yeah.
this.
It's
Really
man, it's
tough.
tough. Like
Yeah. I
on some level, yeah. So yeah, we recorded this YouTube conversation and we're not publishing it. And I still don't know exactly what I think. I mean, I made the call to not publish it, so obviously I think we shouldn't publish it. Not because I think the views anyone said anything that should not be said, because I think people should say what they think. And it was two people I respect a lot, Donnie Moss and Nathan Semmel, who are on this podcast. And ultimately, I was convinced by a friend of mine. I won't say who, but I have a good friend who's been an actress for decades, is very experienced in communication, and she basically told me, "You're trying to tell people what you should do in a fire. You're trying to create new systems for putting out a fire in the
mhm.
middle of a fire. You don't do that in the middle of a fire. In the middle of a fire, you just run, right? You don't say
Yeah.
like, "Oh, we need the fire extinguisher installed on floor 3, not floor 2. And by the way, that stairwell isn't set up correctly." And everyone's like, "Dude, we're in the middle of a fire. Will you shut the hell up?" And I
Yeah.
I think that's kind of what happened, like on all sides when I'm talking to people, I'm trying to have this meta level conversation about whether you handle disagreement, and everyone else is just experiencing a fire. They're like in the middle of a fire. And I don't feel it
Yeah.
because I'm not in the thick of that fight. You know, I do
Mhm.
support the protest. I do support efforts to stop all wars. This about me. I'm anti-war. Period. I
Yeah.
don't even want the U.S. government to support Ukraine. I think we should not be building bombs and guns for anybody. But um, but also that's not my main fight. My main fight is for the animals, and I'm trying to make this point about like on a meta level about how the animal rights movement has to come together despite moral disputes, but the people who are involved in that moral disputes are just focused on the actual moral disputes. So
Yeah.
it's like very, very hard to have that meta level conversation that I'm trying to have. So basically, my friend convinced me that you can't do these two things at the same time.
Yeah. Yeah.
I might be able to say who our staff members who thought that.
I don't
You
know.
think you could
Just be
say?
careful. I don't
Okay, maybe
know.
I shouldn't even say it because yeah,
Yeah,
I won't
probably
say that because
I wouldn't. I
yeah, you're
think,
right. I probably shouldn't. It doesn't matter who it was, but it was someone who was on our. Well, maybe I shouldn't even say who it was. Like, but it was someone who's close to us, who had this point of view. And I'm not saying I agree with you entirely because you took the different perspective. I mean, partly because you're like more of a free speech guy. Let it all
mhm.
hang, whatever.
Yeah.
And I sided with this other person just because partly because I think it's just harder to take it back. Once you start that fire, it's kind of hard to take it back. So, although
Well,
your position has
actually,
evolved, you've kind of gone. You were initially
I've
like, no,
gone
let's
back and
not talk
forth.
about this. Yeah,
I've gone back and forth. Honestly, you listen to the team actually, and even like during
yeah,
this, we were having this intense discussion. I don't know if it's even appropriate for us to say, but we'll just fuck it. Let's just say it. We were having this intense discussion, and I wanted it to be published,
mhm,
but just during the course of the conversation, I realized how much disagreement there was, and valid disagreement, that I
yeah,
just kind of came to the conclusion like we're just not ready. Like I
yeah.
don't
I'm
know.
ready.
I
Hmm.
don't know. Like I said that at some point in the meeting. I just like I don't know. That was a really difficult week, and
Yeah, it was.
because everybody honestly like, and I don't know. Everybody was doing their best, and I
Hmm.
was trying to speak up for you because I thought like you were really trying, and
Hmm.
and I didn't agree with you actually. I didn't agree with all your positions, but I just saw you
Sure.
doing your best to appease everybody because you had gotten into this situation where people had learned about this conversation and everybody had a different opinion about it and
And about what? Yeah,
a very intense opinion about it. And
yeah.
I
Oftentimes, about even listening to it, people had such strong opinions about it. I was like,
well, and that's why it's
can you
like
listen to it first?
I thought it was great. Honestly, I was like, I
I
just
thought it
like
was
to
great
hear
too,
from.
honestly. I mean,
I,
if it were just up to me, we would publish everything. If
yeah, yeah,
if not for the fact that there's other stakeholders whose interests matter, there's a movement that matters to me.
yeah. And that's why I'm
You know,
saying that's the difference between you and someone like Vegan Gains, where it's like Vegan
mm,
Gains, it's his brand. Where
yeah, he can do
that's
whatever he
it.
wants with it.
Yeah, he can
He
just do
doesn't
it.
care.
But you
Yeah,
have
he's
to
not trying
consider all
to build a movement or a community or a network of activists. It's just,
right,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
It's
Although, I mean,
really
yeah, it's hard because I think
it
part of good leadership now too is candor. And the way I've tried to cut the balance is say, like, look, I'm obviously not going to always do exactly what I want, but I'm going to
mhm,
tell you, even when I don't do what I want to try and be open and honest with people about why I'm not doing what I want. In this case, Like
Yeah.
if I had my preference again, we would publish it. We just publish everything. We publish that. We publish the blog I wrote with it, and just let it all land where it will. If people don't like it, that's okay. But
Yeah.
um,
But you
but the
have a
reason I'm not is because basically what I just said to you, I think that, and it's not just that point that I think it does miss the mark in terms of having the conversation I'm trying to have, but also because I know that other people are affected when we have,
yeah.
like when we fan the flames of these disputes, it does like actually hurt other people, you know?
Yeah. I just want to say too, just like I don't think we should dwell on this too much more, but I just want to say that I know that that decision upset a lot of people, and
Hmm.
I know you do too. I have a lot of love for everyone that was involved,
Absolutely.
like Donnie, Nathan, everybody who
Yeah. They're
was
great guys.
in disagreement, people that I disagree with on this topic. Like I won't share who, but I also had, recommendations
Hmm.
from you to have a conversation with someone, and I did, and it was really an amazing conversation, even though it was kind of
Yeah.
heated. And love for that person as well. And I just yeah, I've done a bit of organizing before I came on with you
Hmm.
in my area, and I also had to deal with conflict, and it's just it's very exhausting to get it
It is.
right, and it can just really take a lot out of you. And I mean, really, and that's why I was encouraging from the beginning for us not to touch this because I
Hmm.
wanted us to focus on the animals, but I also
Yeah.
don't fault
And
you
then I
for
wasted
trying.
everyone's time.
Well,
I wasted everyone's time by saying, no, let's dive into it. And then
well,
2 weeks later, I'm like, oh, no, you're all right. Let's not dive into this.
Well, I don't fault you for trying, and I think it was
Yeah.
worth a try, honestly. Like, even though it ended up the way it was, you're trying to be a leader, and get out ahead of this. I think you may have overestimated your ability to bridge these divides.
Yeah.
That was my take from it. It's like you're doing your best. You are one of the most gifted speakers and one of the most gifted listeners, which is also another thing that people don't know about you. Um, but this is
Oh, thank you,
really
man. I appreciate that.
yeah, yeah. I mean, it's true. Yeah, you
Hmm.
listen and you take feedback really well. I mean, we've alluded to that. And yeah, people like I don't know, that is another myth about you that needs to be busted that
Hmm.
all the anybody that's had disputes with you, I don't want to speak for you, but I mean, the way you frame it, it seems like you could have a conversation with anybody
Yeah.
about
I can.
anything. Yeah. And yeah, I don't know. It's just I wish people had seen how much agonizing you did over that
Hmm.
because that is it speaks highly of you. So yeah, I hope people
Yeah.
see that, people that were hurt by any decision that was made too. Yeah, we did our best. And maybe
Yeah.
we failed. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, but it speaks highly of you too and the entire team that everyone who's willing to be candid, have these good conversations, state their opinions strongly in
Mhm.
some cases, and then work together as a team. And
Well,
you and some
yeah,
other team members did this as well. And you had
they
tough
did.
conversations with people who disagreed with you about some of these issues, and it led to a better outcome, I think, for everybody. And I just think we have to encourage everyone to do that. Um, yeah, I think the to Steelman the cult allegations against me. I think, yeah, I think I mean, honestly, you've seen this yourself. Part of the problem, in my view, is that, well, I think when I am engaged, I'm a pretty good listener, and I think like every feedback session we've ever done, anonymous, non-anonymous, almost everybody agrees I take feedback pretty well when I take it. But I'm also just not present a lot of times in ways that can be extremely alienating to people, especially when I've promised to be present and I'm not there. Right. So we've had some big disputes in DXC leadership historically. And I think for the most part, they haven't been like raging disputes and argument sort of disputes,
Mhm.
but they're disputes about expectations. And, I think there are times like the allegation against me, even in just some of this, what I think is mostly nonsense. And maybe it's not fair to call it nonsense, but I mean, some of it just is nonsense. It's just completely fabricated, weird allegations. But
Mhm.
one of the allegations is Wayne love bombs people, and I've had good friends even share this with me. It was like, I've had this experience, and maybe you've had this experience where, like, Wayne, one good friend who's actually older and more senior than me in a lot of ways, and in her profession, said to me once, like, Wayne, you make people feel like you love them so much, and then you take it all away. It's like,
Yeah.
and you shouldn't do that. just don't make them feel loved if you're going to take it all away. And she didn't mean just literally like,
Mhm,
it's not a romantic love that she's talking about because I mean, she's an amazing person, the person I'm talking about, but she's much older than me and she's married. And so it's not
mhm.
that at all. She just meant like a friendship and even just a professional love. Like because, and I think, so I think part of it is just recognizing that the relationships are really important. And, because I am a worker. I like to work. I'm always thinking about work. And I often, the argument is like, Wayne treats people as disposable or like he's just kind of works all the time and doesn't invest enough in the relationships. I think that's a fair critique, including in my romantic relationships. I think everybody who's dated me would say like, in many ways, this is a terrible experience because I don't even see this guy. Like he's
Mhm,
like
mhm.
I remember one time, I won't say who, I was dating someone
Be
and
careful
it had
now.
been many, many, many months since we had been on a date. And uh and we were in a serious relationship and like she planned this dinner and movie and she was really, really excited about it and said, like, all right, we have to do this.
Mhm,
And it had been months before we had done anything together, really. Like we're just not seeing each other at all. And it's like in theory in a relationship. And of course, when the night comes, I give her a call and say, like, I have to cancel. I've got something else that came up.
mhm.
And that was actually kind of the end of the relationship. And I understood why. Um, and yeah, I mean, I think, obviously, like in terms of friendships and professional relationships, it's not the same as a romantic relationship, but the dynamic is the same. If you make a commitment to someone, whatever that commitment is, you kind of have to live up to it. And otherwise, people are going to be frustrated. And, so
Well,
yeah.
that's the feedback that I've given you before, and
Yeah, you have given me that
it's just
feedback.
because I could see how resentment could build up,
Mhm.
just because yeah, I mean, I feel like I've had that experience to some degree, but I think I understand you a little better because
Yeah.
yeah, you do make people feel really good, but I
Mhm.
don't think you take it away. I think that's what people are misunderstanding is that you are just really trying to do like a billion things. I mean, if I had any like, I'm glad that you're doing all those things, but there's just like literally not the time of the day
Yeah.
for to cultivate all of these relationships. And I think you're genuine. I think you really
Mhm.
do like these people. Like
I do.
you
Yeah,
yeah, you do, and you
I do like
appreciate
them.
people. You do make people feel good because you kind of like I guess in the case of like someone like me, you've helped me to understand like w- what I can do, like,
Mhm.
and I think that's important. So it's tough. Yeah, I mean, I guess like the silliest allegation against you is that you run a sex cult, and I can dispute that right now. I I signed up for a sex cult, and where's the
Joke's on
sex?
you, Jeremy. No sex call for you.
Joke's on me. I think the closest I had was my feet were like close to your head, sleeping on your floor. That's the closest human contact.
Oh, poor
Well,
Jeremy.
I
We need to
know.
get you in a relationship, man.
Where's the sex?
There's not much
If you're
sex.
gonna
Yeah.
start a sex cult, there's gotta be sex, okay, Wayne?
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, we had another team member who said, like, "This is like the most sexless sex call I've ever seen in my life." No, I mean, people are terrified. I mean, honestly, there's been like almost an overreaction because everyone like hears this sort of shit, and I think there's just fear within direct action everywhere, and within the broader kind of Bay Area or local animal rights scene. There's been so many allegations that people are
yeah,
just afraid to date. They're afraid. I mean, because anything could be interpreted as sexual harassment, and that's one of the sad things about the allegations against me. It's like, all right, I mean, I'm a big boy, I can deal with it. And, and I'm sure I made some mistakes and I've apologized for the mistakes I made, but it's also cultivated this broader fear. Like I've talked to so many young men and older men too in this community who are like afraid to even ask someone out on a date, you know?
yeah,
And,
yeah,
and, and that's not good either. You don't want to create a climate of fear where, or even just they're afraid. Like, honestly, this has happened to me. Like, I'm kind of afraid to talk to any woman. There's a part of me that's a little scared because I'm just always worried that, gosh, if I say like the word but, even if I don't mean, someone's actual anus, like I can just say like, oh, but I don't think we should do that. And no, I'm actually dead serious.
yeah, no,
This
I
has gone through
understand.
my head once where I said but, and I meant BUT, not BUTT. And I thought, oh shit. Cause
Wow, that's
I
like
won't say who it was, but I was around someone who I thought was like a little sensitive about this stuff. And I was afraid they thought I meant BUTT. And I was like, I almost went to them and said, like, I meant BUT, not BUT. And you cannot work in that environment if you're
Yeah.
constantly on these eggshells, terrified you're going to break one of the eggs. You know, it's a really really tough environment.
Yeah, it is, and I mean, just the number of allegations that go around in our movement is alarming. And like, look, I want to say because I was not there for a lot of this stuff, so like, I just want to make clear, like, when we're discussing this stuff, that we're not trying to diminish anybody's experience or anything. Because
Of course not. Yeah.
I sort of try to make light of the stupid sex cult thing because that's ridiculous. I
Mhm.
also I also don't want to seem facetious about someone's experience that they had. But I
Yeah,
just
because there have
like,
been real instances of sexual harassment. 100%, there
yeah,
have been.
yeah,
What's
and
not true is that we've ignored them. No one, I mean, DXC was run by a lot of extremely strong feminist women. It's being run by extremely strong feminist women now. I'm
yeah,
not
there's
using that term just to win social justice points because I'm
mhm,
not playing that
yeah,
game anyways. I'm just saying it is an accurate description of the women who lead DXC, that they're strong and they believe in women's rights, and they're far to the left of, 95, 99% of people, probably even in progressive communities. They're far to the left of the
yeah,
Democratic Party, and they care about this stuff a lot. The notion that they would just allow men, including me, to run rampant sexually harassing people is pretty preposterous because it's not consistent
yeah,
with the experience of these actual women. They're in many cases calling the shots. And I'm not saying that there haven't been women upset with me or other men. There absolutely have been. But my perspective on this is, when you say something that's incorrect, you should apologize. Or even if you just say something that's hurtful to somebody, just apologize. And that might have not even been a word that you understood was offensive. So, for example, if you accidentally say the word butt and someone just interprets it as BUTT and they feel threatened, think like, were you talking about touching my butt? No, I meant BUT. Just say like, oh, I didn't mean that. I'm sorry. And,
yeah,
and, and, and then we should be able to grow and learn from that experience together. What happens instead is it creates these existential conflicts in a community. Both sides entrench in their positions and decide they're going to try and destroy the other side. And also, people lose sight completely of whatever the original conflict was because they've just
right,
decided, there's bad people on one side and good people on the other side. And this goes to both sides. And you see this of Israel, the Israeli Gaza conflict. You saw this Black Lives Matter. You see this with Me Too stuff.
mhm,
Like, one of the beautiful things about the conversation with Richard was we have extremely different moral positions on a number of issues.
you do, yeah,
And we talked them out. And guess what? We came out of it with even more respect for each other.
you did, yeah. I even told you, I was like, I could tell that Richard was he had respect that you didn't just, like, flee from disagreement.
Yeah.
And then I was watching him stream your opener video, and he said,
Mm.
like, "I really like Wayne." Like,
Oh, cool.
he said, "I feel like Wayne's done some fucked up things, but
Mm.
I really like the guy."
That's
He was
awesome.
talking, he was talking about your
I feel the same
disagreement.
about him.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's not cool that people canceled him too. I mean, just because movements need diversity of perspectives, and like whatever you think about the Gaza conflict, whatever you think about vegan cats. I mean, our disagreement was about vegan cats.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
And it was. I mean, it's a fairly small disagreement, at least from my perspective. I'm going to think it's small because I think what I did was okay, but I fed my vegan cat non-vegan food for about a year in his last year of life because it was a prescription diet, and Richard thought that was wrong, and I understand that. In many
Mhm.
ways, that's
And by the way,
like a
I
more
think that's
honorable.
wrong. Yeah,
Mm,
I disagree with you on that, but I also
yeah,
I understand it. I
sure. Yeah, I mean, I love
I
my cat.
know how much you love your cat, and,
Of course.
well, I know how
Yeah,
much you love your family, so,
yeah, and
um
he's family. Joan was my family. I'm not
yeah,
gonna do everything I can to help him.
exactly, yeah. So, I mean, I think that's a pretty important way to live too, that you take care of your
Mhm.
own,
Yeah,
and,
gotta take
that's
care of your
part
people.
that is part of what the culture that we're trying to build is that we take care of our own, and part of that is just, or at least me, like, I'm trying that, like, you are also, I think you have so many considerations that you're trying to build this movement. I'm just trying to make sure that we take care of people, and
Yeah.
that activists are supported even when we disagree. And I know that's been a big part of what your channel has been about. Um,
Mhm.
yeah, and it's really hard. I mean, disagreements are, they're not easy to get through. I mean, like, when you're having a tough discussion with someone, the tendency is to, like, kind of defend yourself, like,
Mhm.
it's almost like a defense mechanism, like a survival instinct.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's right.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, it helps that I know, and I think that Richard knows that there's a foundation of just, mutual respect, and even care. Like I care about him. Like
Yeah.
it hurt me to see people trying to cancel him, honestly, because I've met this guy. I
Hmm.
thought he was a great guy, and I just admire him too. I think he's extremely smart.
Yeah.
And he definitely likes diving into controversy, whether it's Me Too or Gaza or whatever the issue is, or vegan cats. I mean, he dives into controversy, but that's not a bad thing for the movement. We need people to have these honest opinions about controversial takes, and even if you disagree with him, understanding that that disagreement will actually help you become stronger. And he
Right.
changes my mind about things a lot.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, he changes his mind too. Yeah.
that's good.
I
Find a
remember
good
you,
character.
yeah, I remember, and please don't reveal who this person was. As
Okay.
we had it was behind the scenes, yeah, that, I had upset someone. Remember, it was like a
Mhm,
prominent vegan YouTube
mhm,
person, and like, I just didn't understand why they were upset. Anyway, you
mhm,
said I brought it to you and you said, "Okay, well, the thing to do is, when you feel like when someone feels hurt, you just like tell them sorry and how can I make this better?" And you kind of
mhm,
took over for me and talked to them. And
mhm.
yeah, you were basically apologizing for something you like, in my opinion, you hadn't done. But I think that speaks to what you just said, that you feel like, like you, you're just I don't know. I guess the point I'm making, you're doing your best. You're trying to make
Yeah,
everybody feel better, and I mean, not necessarily. You're trying to get the animals
yeah,
free.
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Let's
but that
take
requires us to have a lot of compassion for each other. I think the nonviolence stuff. Have you done it? You
inter.
haven't done a nonviolence training yet, have you?
Oh no, I
Have you
don't
done
think
one of
so.
those? They're
No.
really good.
I
Obviously you
mean,
need the
moving
right
with
trainer,
you is
but
like a nonviolence training. So yeah, I've
yeah,
I've done it through you.
yeah. I mean, honestly, you always had pretty chill attitude from the time I first met you. I thought you. I don't know if it's like the experience you had in NPR or just your inherent personality, but you've always struck me as someone who's pretty even keeled. But the nonviolence training is actually a pretty useful tool. One of the fundamental things it teaches you is nonviolence is a discipline. It's not a decision, it's not a
Hmm.
trait, it's a discipline, which means and Kazoo, one of the trainers who trains nonviolence here in the Bay Area, and he's actually gonna do a training for us in August, which I need to email. One of the billion things I'm behind on. I need to email him and Diana Navon who are gonna help us out with
Hmm.
this training. But he says you have to treat nonviolence like a martial art. You're not gonna get good at this just from saying, "Oh, it's not just a position." A lot of people think nonviolence is just a position you take.
Yeah.
It's not. It's a discipline you train into yourself, and that requires meditation. That requires maybe therapy. It requires practice.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah. So even the training that we used to do a lot, and we haven't done it as often recently. Uh, it used to be a training that actually kind of trained you to continue to train yourself, so you could go
Hmm.
back and like take home some lessons and continue to do it. And I'm actually really excited about relaunching that next month. It's gonna be next month sometime.
Yeah.
Not next month, it's gonna be in August, so 2 months from now.
Yeah. Well, it's core to who you are and the movement that you're trying to build. So
Yeah.
it makes sense that people would be trained in that, because a lot of times, like, I mean, it's just like anything. You just don't want to throw people into a situation that they haven't been, prepared for, I guess.
Yeah.
And nonviolence training being one of the main ones.
So what's the
Um,
best training you've done, and what's the dumbest training you've done?
with you mean?
Just in
Like,
general for animal rights or even beyond, even as a journalist. What do you think was the best? Like, "This was awesome. Like, more people should do this." And what was the one you felt like, "Why the hell is anyone doing this? This is so stupid."
well, I told this story about this guy George, who is my mentor in radio, and I mean,
Mm,
it's not really like an official training, so
training.
this is
Mm.
probably not that helpful. But he just took me under his wing and showed me how to do radio, and I
I remember
was
you telling me about it.
I thought it was weird that nobody really gets that training. They just throw people on
Yeah.
the air, and I think you could extrapolate from that lessons
Yeah,
for the
yeah.
animal rights movement as well. As far as
Interesting. What
um,
are the lessons you can extrapolate from that?
basically just that, you want, like, so for instance, I don't want to discourage people from doing activism, but I feel like you want to be you want to do as good as you can. So
Mm,
taking the time to get things right.
right.
So
Yeah,
for
prepare.
instance, like, yeah, I think for instance, like, say you're doing an investigation or something, do your homework. I mean,
Mhm,
obviously,
mhm. Yeah,
Um,
don't go running into slaughterhouse with no plan like me back in
yeah.
2007.
I mean, hey, like do something rather than nothing, but
Nothing.
do
Yeah.
it as well as you can.
Yeah.
I guess that's what the point that I'm making. I mean, from
Yeah,
radio,
you know,
you
in the civil rights movement, they weren't even allowed to participate in the direct actions unless they'd been through a nonviolence training.
oh, really? Interesting.
Yeah, they didn't even let you do it.
It makes sense. It
Mhm.
makes sense, and the results speak for themselves. So
Yeah.
yeah. I think there is also a lesson in radio where it's like you can work on something, and you see this with your team in video as well. Like there's a point where you've edited and edited and edited, like you got to move on. So at
Mhm.
some point, like every video
Yeah,
can
you
be
can't
made
do too much.
better. Yeah.
Yeah, it's true.
So yeah, you do have to just can't let, I guess that's like, can't let the perfect be in the way of the good or something.
Yeah.
It's one of those
Yeah.
quotes. We did this last time.
Who is George's last name? Is he still on NPR?
George Scheibner,
Scheibner?
Scheibener. Yeah, he works in Wilmington, and
So he's still there
yeah,
now?
I think so.
Interesting.
Yeah, I haven't had as much contact with him. He was like my best friend for a long time, but um,
Interesting.
yeah, I just kind of had, my life moved on.
Oh,
Um,
yeah.
it did seem fairly recently, but yeah,
Operations manager, host, Smooth Landings.
yeah, he's great. Just old
He's the
school radio
production manager
guy.
for WHQR.
Hmm.
He's got such a friendly face too.
Oh, he does, man. He's the best.
Yeah.
You're not going to find a better human
You should
being.
reach out to him. Tell him about
Oh
your
yeah.
life.
Well, I talked to him in Wilmington, not maybe like a year or two ago,
Cool.
um, something like that. I was at a veg fest. I was like playing piano at all these veg fests. They were hiring me, and got to
Cool.
see George. So that was nice. George, by
Nice.
the way, was always vegetarian. I don't think he's vegan,
Really?
but we would always get pizzas, and we would
Hmm.
always get the veggie
Cheese
toppings. And
pizza.
this is,
Interesting.
I remember asking George actually one time. I was like, "This is this for like animal rights reason kind of thing?" He said, "Well, that's part of it." We
Huh.
never dove into it though.
Interesting.
So it's interesting. He's not vegan though, as far as I know.
Well, we got to
Um,
get him.
I know, I know. Got to get
Yeah,
George.
he's got a very kind face. I'm just looking at Google Images, and there's a couple images of him smiling, and he just looks like a very kind person.
Well, he treats everybody like family, and
That's
I
awesome.
learned of that in Wilmington, that, the team that I was surrounded by, we like you would do potlucks together. We're always together, we're hanging out, and it
Mm,
really was a family, you
mm.
know.
Sounds
I do,
kind of culty.
yeah, it was a little bit of a cult. Still no sex. I don't get it.
No,
It's the
but no
PR
sex.
cult.
You're doing all these cults, and you're missing out on the sex, Jeremy. Jeez.
Damn it.
You need to
Damn.
find like Nexium or something like a good sex cult. You're joining all these like terrible sex cults.
I know. I think that's the takeaway from this conversation, is
Yeah.
that I can't find
Find
a
a
good
good
sex
sex
cult.
cult. Yeah. Oh, work harder on that. Huh.
Yeah. We did
So wait,
this last
what's
time.
the worst training you've ever received? Have you ever been to a training and you were like, what the hell is
Well,
the point of that?
yeah, but I don't want to say, because I did one very recently, and it would just be,
You're gonna call somebody out.
yeah, I'd have to call him out.
All right,
And
let's
I
not
don't
do
want to
that
do
then.
that, because it was a serious topic. It was just that some of the stuff that was said during it was kind of silly to me. But
Huh,
yeah,
interesting.
yeah, I'll share that with you in the
All right, yeah,
background.
tell me afterwards. I'm
Yeah.
trying to think. I think, one of the interesting things to me about nonviolence trainings is I think my my worst training is every training I've ever been through until I went to a nonviolence training. I
Wow.
hated training so much.
Yeah.
I always thought training, I've told you before. I think I've told you. I think training is kind of pointless. I'm like, what's the point of training?
Yeah, you said
People
that.
learn things by doing them themselves. You learn by doing. You don't learn by training.
Mhm.
But the nonviolence training is the exception. I really think, because it's based on the civil rights movement, and they do really just have these incredibly interesting exercises. It's a really interactive training. So, um, yeah, after we do it in the Bay Area, maybe we can give you the materials and you can organize something in North Carolina. I think it'd be good for the North Carolina activists to be exposed to some of this material too. Maybe
Yeah,
we could
you're
even get like a certified trainer out there, or maybe you could become a certified. I mean, it's kind of early. You'd have to
yeah.
be pretty into it to become a certified trainer. But I will say the training institute is in Rhode Island. It's this guy, Bernard Lafayette at the University of Rhode Island, who trains everyone. So it's a lot closer to you than me,
Yeah, that's true.
if you wanted to be certified. But we're getting way ahead of things because you haven't even been to the training. But it's good.
Yeah, I should do
Um,
that.
by the way, I got to get going soonish because I got a gym class booked at 4:10. Just
Okay,
FYI.
yeah, I
So we
was gonna
got
say, I
probably
was trying
5
to
minutes before I got to start going.
Okay, well, we did this last time, I was gonna say, where we just rambled, and then we didn't even get to the topic that we were gonna talk about. We did that in
Oh yeah,
your
we're going to
interview,
talk about
so
Ridgeland.
let's talk about Ridgeland. There's just so
We talked
much.
about more
See,
fun stuff than that.
Yeah, yeah. Well, let's talk about Richland because there's important
Okay.
stuff coming up. Why don't you give me a primer on what's happening?
Yeah, I'll just be super brief that on July 10th, we have a chance to save 3,000 dogs and potentially save tens of thousands of other dogs across the world because
Yeah.
Ridgeland is one of the two remaining large scale producers of beagles for the use in lab experiments. We have decades of evidence of animal cruelty from animals apparently being burned, hopefully dead animals, in the early 2000s. Animals confined in cages so small they're spinning around because they've been driven to insanity. And the most recent allegation is animals who are being surgically mutilated without painkillers or anesthetic.
Hmm.
And it's all going to come before the court on July 10th. And Region is trying their hardest to quash our subpoenas. They're trying to gag the entire proceeding, prevent the public and journalists from seeing what's happening inside. They just filed a motion saying, they're basically accusing the judge of misconduct and saying, you can't allow this to be a public proceeding, which is preposterous. I mean, in the US Constitution, every defendant has not just a right, but a duty to defend themselves in public court. We don't believe in kangaroo courts that are shrouded in secrecy in this country. And that's what Ridgeland wants. They want it to be a kangaroo court where no one can see what's actually happening. And so we need everyone's help on July 10th. And, I was just talking to a very important witness yesterday. A couple of people talked to a very important witness today. We're trying to line up our witnesses, get all our evidence together. We got a very important brief to be filed on June 28th. And on July 10th, we're going to be in Wisconsin arguing for these dogs. And if we win, not only will a special prosecutor be appointed to investigate the animal cruelty and potentially save all 3,000 dogs, it'll be a clarion call across the entire vivisection industry that the writing is on the wall. We are going to save every single one of these animals from a lab.
Just go look at your dog. If you have a dog, go look at your dog and just imagine
Yes.
3,000 of them.
Yeah.
And
Trapped in
that's what's
cages.
on the line here on July 10th.
Yeah.
It's
Super
really,
messed up.
yeah, it's really messed up. I
Super
I
messed up, but it's super important opportunity for us to save them all.
Most people don't know that we use dogs for experimentation. That's one of the things that at least we've done is to raise a little more awareness about that already.
Yeah.
So thank you for doing that. Thank you so much for devoting yourself to the animals, Wayne. That's what I
Yeah.
love about you the most. You're the hardest worker I know. You devote
Thanks, man.
yourself to the animals, and nobody can take that away from you. They can say
Thanks,
whatever the
man.
fuck they want about you, but
Yeah.
nobody's worked harder for the animals that I've met.
Yeah.
So thank you.
Thank
Why don't
you.
we let you go because you're busy and it's your fucking birthday, my friend. Happy
Yeah. I got to
birthday.
go to the gym. That's what I got to do.
Yeah.
I didn't go to the gym yesterday because I had all these calls. And they all were going super long.
I'm
So
gonna eat
you
your
know how I almost never don't go to the gym too. Like it's very, very rare. And yesterday was one of those days. So I got to go today.
I
I'm
hope
I'm
this
gonna start getting stir crazy if I don't go to the gym. I need to run around and pick things up that are heavy.
let's get you out of here
All right, let's
then.
go.
All right.
Until next time, my
Till next
friend. Let's
time.
do it again sometime soon. Great.
Sounds good.
Cool. Good stuff.